Apologies if this video is coming a bit late. I just saw the Bradley Beal news. I was watching the season finale of Demon Slayer, and then I checked Twitter after the episode was done and saw that the Phoenix Suns, not the Miami Heat, not the Milwaukee Bucks, not the Sacramento Kings, not the 76ers, but the Phoenix Suns, who kind of snuck on over the weekend as a sleeping giant to land Bradley Beal, they get Bradley Beal, and you could just tell that Bradley Beal and his agent, Mark Bartelstein, whose son is a high-level executive with the Phoenix Suns, you can tell they had their hands all over this trade, what the return was going to be in terms of which players get sent in and sent out, and this is what everybody saw a few years ago when they were trying to extend Bradley Beal, right? It was like, why not trade him at his highest value? But of course, the Wizards owner wanted to win and decided to, give Beal. Honestly, I don't want to talk about the contract because I am higher on Bradley Beal than most people. I think he is a damn good player and would be an overqualified number 2 option on a really good team or a contender to me. But that contract really is one of the worst contracts in NBA history. Just for the simple fact that if you just look at I saw a list the other day, if you look at the list of no trade clauses in NBA history, which players were able to get the no trade clause in their contract, is basically 11 dudes and 10 of them are Hall of Famers and the other one is Bradley Beal. So that contract is bad because the Wizards got back Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and according to Shams Charania, a handful of second-round picks and multiple pick swaps. That is nothing. That is nothing for Bradley Beal. Of course the Phoenix Suns should do this trade. Now, there's questions of how it's going to work on the court. There's a question of that's a lot of mid-range shooting, but Bradley Beal is really good at getting to the rim, and the Suns need some rim pressure. That's kind of been a thing that they've needed the last year and a half, 2 years. So I'm interested to see how it works. I think it's a high ceiling play, obviously. And I also think that there's a little bit of new owner syndrome involved in this because it just seems like Matt Ishbia is all about getting, the big names. But on the court, I think this offense will be really good. Now, we'll see what the Suns do with DeAndre Ayton. I honestly think it's a very high possibility that Ayton is gone and he gets traded for, role players and maybe get some draft compensation back. But you saw it in the playoffs. The Suns can plug and play any center and make them effective just because they're playing off of Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, and when Chris Paul was healthy, pick and roll maestro and Chris Paul. Ayton's kind of expendable at this point. I mean, he's clearly not fallen off, but he hasn't been the player that he was in that 2021 playoffs where we all thought he was going to build off that. Of course, there was the turmoil he had with his own head coach, now in Detroit, Monty Williams. So this honestly may be the time now for the Suns to start looking for Ayton offers, and I wonder how much DeAndre Ayton was a factor in Frank Vogel's decision to become the new head coach of the Phoenix Suns, because that is a big he could probably get the most out of defensively. He's a defensive-minded coach, obviously. I wonder how that dynamic's going to play out, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Suns decided to start looking for Ayton trade packages and seeing what they can get for him, because if they get a few role players to kind of fill out the rest of the roster around a big 3 of Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker, and then you just plug and play centers like Jock Landale, guys who are play finishers rather than initiators, and in Ayton's case, I'm sure every player should want the most out of themselves. They want to aim for high goals, and I'm sure Ayton has higher goals for himself as a player, and I wonder how much of that was a tug and pull with the Suns, because Ayton in his role, especially in the 2021 playoffs, where he was just a roller, he rolled hard, finished around the rim, caught the ball on the move and went towards the cup. But I'm sure he wanted something more than that, and that's natural for a young player. But with Beal now in the fold with Booker and Durant, I'm not so sure where those touches are going to come from for Ayton. But I don't know. I'm higher on Beal than most people, and I think it's never a bad thing to get multiple dynamic offensive players on the same team at once, especially because Beal's off-ball prowess kind of makes this work. They can all play off-ball. Now, the fit is going to be clunky because those guys, eventually, they need the ball in their hands, and that's when they're at their best. But I think the fit with Beal and Booker as a backcourt, I just think there's no such thing as too many dynamic offensive weapons, especially when both of these guys play well off the ball, and Kevin Durant at this point in his career is not going to get to the rim often, so Devin Booker and Bradley Beal have to up their rim attempts this year and not primarily live in the mid-range, which, Beal shot a lot of mid-rangers, especially post-John Wall. Bradley Beal had to take on a lot, and it's clear he's not a number one guy on a contender, but he is a high-end, I think, number two type of player because of his game, his off-ball game. He's a really good shooter, even though the last few years his three-point percentage has been down. He's just had to take a lot of tough shots, but we saw the type of shooter Bradley Beal was earlier in his career when he was working off ball with John Wall, and he was slowly progressing as an offensive player and as a lead ball handler. And then, of course, he had to fast track that with all of John Wall's injuries. So I like this trade for the Suns. I'm always a fan of getting a really good offensive player. I know that the roster might be barren and, the second apron looms for the Suns because that is a lot of money committed to only 4 players, which is another reason why I think Ayton's going to be gone. But if you were able to just fill out the rest of the roster with just solid bigs like a Jock Landale who could run the floor, stay on the court in a playoff series, and then just fill the rest of the roster out with complementary pieces like a Torrey Craig, like a Josh Okogie. Maybe they should re-sign him and bring him back. There are ways to fill out this roster, and ultimately in the playoffs, you're probably going to be at an 8-man rotation anyway. If you could just find 8 guys that can stay on the floor, 7 at least, in the playoffs, then you're good. But the Suns now have 3 dynamic shot creators. It's an interesting trade to say the least. They definitely have the highest variance out of any team probably going into next season. And by the way, I'm not saying that this is like a slam dunk home run deal for the Suns, but for the price that we just saw, I would do that Bradley Beal trade 10 times out of 10 just on face value, take away the teams and all that. But it doesn't hurt when your top 3 players are Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal.